Hey, this is Derek. I picked up this book, Perennial from Ryan Holiday. He was in Portland a couple weeks ago. I'm going to do a quick kind of book review. I really love this book. It's one of the best books on creative production that I've read in quite a while. And I've really looked through all of them because a lot of the books about creativity and creative production, they say things that aren't really helpful for artists and especially authors. This book, even though it's kind of about the art and the creativity and the process, it's actually also about book marketing. So specifically, authors who write books have trouble marketing them for a variety of reasons, and they hear a lot of bad advice about creativity, like just focus on your passion, don't worry about the market, stuff like that. And I was a little worried this book was going to go in that direction in the beginning, but I'm going to tell you why it didn't, why I really like it above kind of all other books on creativity. And also there's basically four steps that Ryan goes through. So I'm going to quickly try to go through that. So I mentioned, like in the beginning, I was a little worried about the introduction, because he starts off saying that crappy products don't survive, art can't be hurried, some things that kind of focus on good work, like just make good work. And it's difficult to define what good work actually is, and some people think if you produce it with your passion, then it's better quality work. So I was worried it was going in that direction, but it actually didn't. It really went into you need to create valuable work by having an audience in mind. If you're not creating with a specific audience in mind, your book's not going to resonate with anybody. So you have to do that research first, because it can't be fixed later. It's really about providing value to more people. And there's a really great quote that I liked, that the absence of an intended audience is not a commercial problem, it's an artistic one. I think that's really important and really valuable, that if you want to create work that matters, whether writing or art, you need to think of a specific audience so that you can satisfy them, so that you know how to make work that creates an emotional response. A lot of authors resist that specific idea. So I love the fact that this book starts off, the first half of the book basically is about making work that matters. And there's kind of two steps to this, which are the first two of the four-step process. The first one is creating the work. The second is packaging and positioning the book. Most creative work skips over those steps and they just launch to market, and then they focus on the advertising or the marketing. A lot of authors, they publish the book and then they want to focus on the advertising and the marketing, and that's really way too late. So you have to make work that matters by narrowing down your audience first and doing the research. And also he says practicing in public, which I think is really valuable, and especially a lot of fiction authors don't do it this way. For non-fiction authors, sure, you put up a blog post and you see how people respond to it, you test out titles or ideas, hopefully you're building your audience also. A lot of fiction authors don't do this, and they're really hesitant about practicing in public. They want to make it like a perfect finished book before they put it out, but then they're not getting the feedback and they're not really figuring out who their audience is or learning what they need to know whether or not this is going to be a good idea. So those were kind of the first two pieces. We're creating the product and then positioning the product. Once you know your audience, then you can position the product to be obvious to that audience, to attract that audience, to be obvious about the benefits so that they know exactly what the book is. Especially with my background in book design, we have this rule that's be clear before you're clever. So you have to be, the book cover is to immediately attract your audience and communicate the genre or the benefits or the subject so that they read the description. Most authors, they want a book cover that's new or different or doesn't really fit into one genre. It's kind of cross between. He also says this really smart thing, which is that if you're between genres, if you're not one genre, but you're like, my book is a mix of this genre and that genre and that genre, it's not that you're going to attract all of those genres. You're actually going to alienate everybody, because the hardcore readers of one genre, they want a book that's that genre. They don't want this cross-genre thing that doesn't really fit what they're looking for. So if you try to appeal to everybody, if you try to make something that doesn't fit in the boxes, it can be a lot harder to sell because you're not narrowing down your audience, and you're not creating, like, you won't sell twice as much by doubling your audience, your genre. You'll sell half as much because you're not really selling well to anybody. You need to learn the rules to break them. So creating high quality, valuable work that lasts, or a perennial seller, is not about making something totally new. It's about understanding the demands of the genre, understanding what that audience responds to and who they are and what they want, so that you can very quickly position your book what this book is and who this book is for, you really have to do that formula. Once you have that formula, what is this, what are the benefits, and who is going to like it, what are they going to get out of it, both for fiction and nonfiction. Once you're really specific about that, you can start to pitch your book in a way that's going to respond to people, or people are going to respond in a certain way to your book. So then Ryan moves on to marketing, kind of in the second half of the book. So the first two steps are creating and positioning. And it's really interesting because a lot of marketing actually takes place in those first two steps. If you have the right product fit to market and you position and package it well, a lot of your marketing is already done. Getting the right title, the right subtitle, pitching your concept in the right way that's going to appeal to that defined audience, that's going to do a lot of your marketing for you. And then he also points out a lot of he's having an interesting debate with authors, and I know that he's frustrated. He's talking about most authors want a publicist. They want to hire someone to do their marketing for them, and he says, don't do that. You can only do your own marketing for yourself. No one's really going to do the marketing for you, which is a great tip. Also, the main reason that he says this is because you can't make people care if you're not the one talking about it. So if somebody else is talking about the work for you, it's harder to get people to emotionally connect with what you're trying to do. So you really need to be the marketer so that you can get people to care and make that emotional investment, that personal investment. He says also, don't spend tons of money on a publicist. It's basically a waste of money. A lot of the old school publicist stuff, like getting on the media or the radio, doesn't really work that well anyway. There are other things that you can do, like growth hacking or newsjacking, which is kind of interrupting the narrative, or just basically, like, if you want to be in the media, which doesn't necessarily sell books anyway, but if you want to do it, you can do it by being interesting. You have to find a way to make your story or your book relevant to current events, or interesting by connecting it to a story. And when contrasting these two main platforms for marketing, like either hiring a publicist and trying to get news, or giving your book away for free to influencers on the one hand, or early adopters on the other hand, that's the best kind of marketing, because that's word of mouth marketing, which is really the best form. I was talking to H.M. Ward earlier today, who sold millions of books, and someone was asking in one of my groups, like, I don't have a budget for marketing, what do I do? And she was saying how most of her marketing, like, she sold millions of books without advertising or promotion, based mostly on word of mouth. It's really the most important, most valuable things. There are two ways to build that up. So in the framework of book marketing and book marketing, like the things that you're going to do to get the visibility for your book, the two important ones that he talks about, which is kind of the fourth step, is platform. So he talks a lot about marketing, but it's mostly about, like, the stuff that doesn't really work. The little tactics don't work as well as building a product that people want, making sure it's for an obvious market, positioning it attractively to sell, to attract that market, that audience. Then the marketing, a big part of the marketing is actually the platform. So after you launch the book, focus on building your platform. And your platform is your email list, which are your followers who like your work, and your network of influencers. So those are more relationships or peers, and those are the two things you really want to focus on building. So that's not exactly what a lot of authors think about when they think of marketing, but those are the most important pieces. So what a lot of authors do is they'll just spend money on a publicist, or they'll spend money on advertising, but they're not building their own platform. And your platform is your email list and your relationships. And some of those things, like, they take a long time to build, but those are the two things you really want to invest big on building and growth. Anyway, so there's one more quote I wanted to a couple more quotes I wanted to read really quickly. The first one was, you want to position your book emotionally to appeal to the right audience or the right market. And he says, picking a lane is the first act of empowerment you'll face as a creator. So a lot of creative people, they refuse to pick a lane, to be defined by one genre or one topic. But the way to succeed, and there's a quote on the back by James Altucher, author of Choose Yourself, which says, this is basically a guide to creativity in the real world. And that's basically the point. Like, you can do all this creative stuff, but if you want to make valuable books that sell long term, it has to be a dialogue with readers. Readers have to like the book that you've made. So you have to choose to pick a lane so that you can get really good at one specific thing instead of just practicing a lot of different stuff. You have to choose what you want to dominate in, and then you have to be the best in that space. So you can pick a genre or a topic, whether in fiction or nonfiction, and you want to be the best thing in that space. But you can only do that if you know what the space consists of, if you know the rules, if you know what readers like and what they respond to. The other quote I really wanted to read that was awesome is, to do the work without a platform is to be at the mercy of other people's permission. And that's how most authors are doing it. Most authors are begging for permission. They're begging for other people to help them, to support them, to share their stuff. They're paying for advertising. Most of the time you can't be profitable with advertising unless you've written a book that's attractive to a certain market and you've positioned and packaged it well to be immediately obvious to that market. Most authors don't do that. Most authors fail at those two critical first steps, and so they can't make advertising profitable, and the book will fail, not only because it fails to resonate with a certain audience, but also because you can't cost effectively put your book in front of that audience if you don't have a product that already converts with great book design and a great positioning statement, packaging, message. That's the stuff that you really have to get right. Like, the most important marketing is getting that stuff right on purpose the first time. So I love that this book talks about all that stuff. Most books don't talk about that stuff, especially a lot of books on book marketing. They just talk about what happens afterwards, and they give all these really specific book marketing tips that don't really work because they won't solve the first two major problems, and also because they don't address the fourth part, which is building your own platform. A lot of authors still resist building your own email list, or putting in the time to build friendships and relationships with other authors in your genre. A lot of authors don't want to do that stuff, and Ryan Holiday basically says, this is the stuff you need to do. Yeah, I understand it's uncomfortable. I understand, you just want to do the work and not worry about the marketing, but this is the stuff you want to do if you want to be successful. So I really recommend this book. I'm going to write a long blog post about it with some other amazing quotes, because there's some really good stuff in here, and I want to go in a little more depth. But I highly recommend it if you're a creative person, if you're in the arts or creative industries at all, or especially if you're an author and you're figuring out how to write a book, make a living as a writer, or launch your book, or build an author platform. There's some really good tips and feedback in this book. Thanks a lot. Bye-bye.